What is up, YouTube? Today I am going to be bringing you my first Deadlock guide for Paradox. This video will cover the basics of the character's kit, a general game plan, and building tips to master Paradox, the Artifact of Time. So the first ability we'll start with when talking about Paradox is her 1, which is going to be her Pulse Grenade. You will throw a grenade which begins pulsing when it lands. Each pulse applies damage, a movement slow, and a stacking damage amplification against the target. This is really useful for early game. This is always going to be your first ability you take in your laning. You can see the first level has it pulse at an extra time. The second level is a cooldown reduction, and the fifth ability point put into it is extra flat damage, and you get an increased radius per pulse. You will see on the video example to the right, this last point is quite notable, but due to some of the other abilities in their kit, it's not often you get this online. Next is going to be her 2, which is Time Wall. You create a time warping wall that stops time for all enemy projectiles and bullets that touch it. Enemies that touch the wall will take damage as a percentage of their max health and are slowed. You've already got 2 slows mixed together with her 1 and her 2. And her 2 is percent health damage. So this is always good. Percent health damage in MOBAs is almost always valuable, just because it scales no matter how behind you are. And this is probably her most important ability in her kit. As you see, her level 1 gives her 2-meter width, 1-meter height. The wall covers a larger space. You're going to block more abilities and more bullets in general. The second gives you another charge, which means you can wall more often. This is a very good ability for fighting in chokes and small spaces. And the final point, which is usually going to be your first maxed ability, allows your wall to silence enemies for 3 seconds, which is incredibly useful to disable the enemy's, powerful abilities. Say you're fighting a Pocket or a Lady Geist. This is going to turn them into just a standing bot that really can't fight back very much. Her next ability is Kinetic Carbine. This is a very interesting ability and one of my favorites in her kit. You can charge your weapon for increased movement speed once it's fully charged. The next shot releases the energy, dealing spirit damage and applying a time stop to the enemy hit. The damage dealt is an amplification of your current weapon damage. Now, most people do not read that last line, which is vital. You can see that the damage amp is a plus 85%, but the base damage it is scaling off of is your weapon damage. So Paradox is not an AP character for most of her kit. This is all scaled from her bullet damage, so bullet damage is very valuable on Paradox. The first point increases the time that the opponent is stopped when you hit them. The second point lowers the cooldown and adds a longer channel, which means you will have 1, more mobility around the map, and 2, you can threaten during the wave phase and the laning phase much more effectively because you hold the carbine and it makes a sound that's very noticeable to enemies. They will be less likely to peek you while you hold the carbine. And the final point to max it gives you a 50% extra max damage up, bringing you to 135% damage amplification, which if you combine with, again, your 1, where you're getting that damage amp per stack, you're going to be doing a lot of solid damage. Now for what makes Paradox Paradox. Paradoxical Swap, her ultimate ability, or her 4. You will fire a projectile that swaps your position with the target enemy hero. While this effect occurs, you gain Spirit Lifesteal, and the enemy takes damage over time. So you heal for the full damage of this spell, which is why getting 2 points in this as early as possible is always 100% every game vital. It is a very low cooldown ability, and it's what makes her a mid-game monster and lets you roam and have an incredible amount of map impact. The third point in Paradox's 4th ability gives it a 20-meter range increase, which is incredibly good when people start playing very safe and far away, and they don't want to get picked by you. This ability lets you nab them from very, very far away. Okay, at this point, let's go into itemization for Paradox. We will cover some basic stuff here, including like laning phase, the mid game. We'll talk about which items really give you like your power spikes and whatnot. Let's first talk about whether or not you're winning or losing the lane. Some lanes are going to be much harder. Some lanes are going to be much easier, right? I'd say in most lanes, your itemization is very similar, but it depends on the order in which you buy them. If you're down very heavily, I'd highly recommend getting extra regen. It's going to give you some ammo, which means you can shoot the wave a little bit longer, a little bit of base health, and a little bit of health regen. Now, before I go too much more into very specific items, I want to talk about each item category. The weapon category, including in all these orange items, every single weapon, if you look at the top right there, gives you a plus 6% weapon damage added on no matter what the other stats of the item are, just for having that slot. Now, this increases on the price of the item. So a 500 gives you 6, a 1250 10, a 3000 gives you 14%, and a 6200 gives you 18% weapon damage on top of all the stats the item actually offers itself, which is good to know. And similar with vitality items, green items, these are going to give you base health, 11% for 500, 14% for 1250, 17% for 3500, and 20% for 6200. Same way over to the purple items or spirit items, these are going to give you 4 base spirit power, 8 base spirit power, 12 base spirit power, and 16 base spirit power. So just knowing all of that, you can prioritize like your early game spikes based off some of the scaling that benefits your character. Paradox, as I mentioned earlier, is very heavily a gun-based character. A lot of her damage comes from her weapon, and the scaling comes from her weapon damage. But let's go into those laning items. So again, if you're behind, I think these two items are incredibly useful. Paradox starts with the base of 590 health at level 1. I have no abilities or any levels in. But if you notice that when I get extra health, it is a 160 health bonus. So it would be, be 650 health here. But you'll notice that I actually go much higher to 811 because the percent increase on top of the base health brings me all the way to 811. So this item alone, I think, is very underutilized in losing lanes. If you know that, hey, just because level 1 you haven't gotten rolled, if they have like a level 3 spike or something like that, buying this health item is super helpful. This combination of extra health and regen brings you to about 940 health, just level 1. So the difference in survivability with and without these items is monumental. 630 health, you buy 2 greens for 1,000, you have 940 health. And this isn't including any health you may get from collecting golden urns or any other things during the lane. These two make your sustain and your ability to survive in lane much better. And Paradox's early game isn't quite the strongest. It depends on how well you're playing in the matchup, but I'd say in general her early game is not the absolute strongest. So if you're behind or if you're feeling scared in lane, these two items are really good to rush. Now your first orange item is almost always going to be high velocity mag. When you are last hitting minions, their soul pops out of their head like this, and you have to aim and react and flick to it. But with this specific item, the further away you are, the faster your bullets travel. You have faster projectile speed. So when you're getting held down by your tower, you have to play far away because you're low. It's much easier to confirm your shots on those souls from farther away because your bullets travel much faster. They get there quicker, which means there's less time for them to deny your souls. It also makes poking from long range much easier because I'm not having to lead them as much. See, I'm sure if anybody's played any battle royale games such as Apex, they're very familiar with projectile speed and how much it matters. Now the second item I usually buy for my yellow or orange slots is going to be headshot booster. This item is very useful. Base damage, if you read here, it adds every 7.5 seconds you can deal 40 extra base damage. Base damage in this game is very strong. It is very hard to increase your damage, but adding little small exchanges like that to your burst, it's a very short cooldown and you can proc it over and over. I have no cooldown on, but you can see in the bottom left the item will go on cooldown, which means I've taken my poke, I'm chilling, and then when it pops up cooldown, you'll see a little item here show up and you'll see it pop up again here. So I'll shoot it again. I get 114 in one burst. I'll wait for the cooldown. I'll shoot a burst here. I didn't get all headshots, but only 92 there. And then if I burst again, 113 instead. So it's just a little bit of added base damage. I'm sure I'm not doing this perfect, but you get the idea. That added little poke really matters. The next item that I'd recommend you save up for from the orange slots is going to be Mystic Shot. This is, again, we're going for these little one-tap exchanges, especially playing around our Carbine here. So if we Carbine someone with our Mystic Shot, you'll see it does 173 damage. Now, if I didn't have Mystic Shot, let me turn my cooldown off. So you'll see if I use my Carbine without my Mystic Shot, it's going to do 110 damage. But if we have the cooldown with the Mystic Shot, you'll charge it up, You'll get your carbine, you'll shoot, headshot booster for your proc, and you get a very chunky like 270, 280 damage just from that one ability. And this is without any amplification from your pulse grenade, but this poke is really nice. So once we have these 4 items, it's a little more flexible on what you can do. If you're feeling very strong, some games I will straight up save till 3k for Headhunter. Again, that base damage from this item, the 140 headshot damage here, is incredibly good for early trades. If I'm going to combo someone now, this damage is very good. If you get this at 8 minutes and you burst someone in the head, you're doing so much of their health pool early on in the game. Someone might only have maybe 1,000 health at this point, and one burst is doing 1/3 of their health with the Headhunter proc. Now again, I have no cooldown on, so that is going to be less often. As you can see, it pops here, but it times very, very nicely with your Mystic Shot cooldown. You see both pop up again, I can burst again, and you're constantly hitting these big spiky burst windows, which is very, very powerful. Now, Paradox can be played as a support as well. I like to play her more as a duelist and take 1v1s, but I'm sure in higher level play and like really competitive, organized games, support of Paradox is probably better. But I am not playing in organized, like high level scrim games. I'm playing on the ladder, and I need to be able to fight for myself and defend things on my own. So next, I will talk about the active items that I think the 3 best are Slowing Hex, Decay, and Divine Barrier. And I'll talk about them all individually right now. So Slowing Hex gives you sprint speed, which lets you get around the map. This stat is incredibly good as Paradox. You're a mid-game spike power roaming character who helps pressure the map. You are not a power farmer. You're not going to be sitting back doing your tier 2 camps in the corner. You need to be active on the map and getting around. This sprint speed stat very much helps you do this. This is why you also buy Divine Barrier, and you usually get boots too. With these all together, you can see that my speed down at the bottom left goes up to 12 meters per second if I'm not being shot. I get away from these minions. You'll see it'll go up to about 12 meters per second when I'm sprinting with these items, which is pretty quick. And then if I carbine, level 2, it'll go up to 15. I don't know if it actually registered, but with carbine here, you get carbine up, you're speeding at 15, you get Divine Barrier, you're at 18, and suddenly you're moving very quickly around the map. And that's including, the other movement you can do off the zip, but that's a lot to go over in one, so I'm going to stick to the items here. So these are usually your first rush to active items. Go back to the Slowing Hex now. So Slowing Hex is incredibly useful as it gives you the sprint speed, and it also disables the ability to use movement-based abilities. So if you have a Warp Stone, if you have Pocket 2, if you have Wraith Teleport, all of these get stopped if you are Slowing Hexed. They cannot cast the ability, on top of doing base damage and applying a movement speed slow. So if I root someone and then Slowing Hex them, they are very, very slow. I will show you on the dummy here to see how slow they are. You can see that he's moving at full speed here. He is very slow now. After the carbine into the slow, it makes him very easy to hit your headshots, and you can also throw your grenade on them during this time, right? And then they can run away. Maybe you wall swap them back into the grenade. A lot of options that you can do with the Slowing Hex. Slowing Hex in general just makes it much easier to hit your combos, slows them down, stops it from using their mobility, and it gives you that map mobility. Now, Decay is very broken right now. I think this item may get nerfed in the future, so check and make sure that this item hasn't been changed. It's currently a 45-second cooldown. It also provides a 50% healing reduction, so this is very good in your Shiv matchup, your Abrams matchup, your Ivy, your Kelvin. All of these people that are doing a lot of self-healing, this item is going to be your go-to. Divine Barrier. It is a really useful supportive item. You can cast it on yourself in a pinch. You can see my shields here on the left. It gives me a nice 260 health shield for each damage type, for both bullet and spirit damage, which is very useful. And it also increases my movement speed, as you see in the bottom left. So it gives you a nice little chunk of stats that are just overall useful. It's also very good for farming assists. If I see that my teammate is fighting and in a bad spot, I can give them the Divine Barrier. If they get a kill, I get an assist, get a little money, provide a little support. Even if I can't get to the fight in time, if I can only see my ally, having Divine Barrier is very nice. Fleetfoot is a very nice item because it provides bonus slide distance, bonus flat health, and it provides a movement speed penalty removal. So when you're shooting normally, if you'll see I'm moving at 11 meters per second, I start shooting and I'm moving at around 7.6 and it spikes up to 8. If I buy Fleetfoot, I no longer get penalized for moving and shooting, which is very nice. The other major thing that comes with this item is you unlock a technique called heavy melee canceling, which I will do a quick overview, but that probably do a more in-depth thing in a later video, where you can heavy melee and cancel with Fleetfoot, which is very fun to do, very cool to get around the map that way. And it also redirects all your momentum. You can do the same thing with her carbine as well. So I can cancel carbine, I can go back on the zip, heavy melee, Fleetfoot, you know, and you're very mobile. You can fly around the map very quickly on this character. Next, you know, your basic defensives, and if you're feeling like you don't need anti-heal, you can sell Decay for Restorative Locket, which is again going to give you sprint speed. It's going to give you some spirit resist, spirit power. Spirit res is a very hard stat to come by in this game. These are all the items that provide spirit resistance in the game. So Restorative Locket, Spirit Armor are the two that really benefit you the most. So these are very good to pick up against, you know, a heavy spirit damage team, which right now is very, very common. I don't like Cold Front very much because you're not really getting that close to them. And you're kind of more of a hit and run. You don't really want to stay in close range. And just in general, you don't find a lot of use case times for this item. Next, you can get Pristine Emblem. Again, you get more spirit resist, more power. This is an upgrade from your high velocity mag. This is going to give you a nice increased burst damage when they're above high health. So when you go for that carbine, when they're full health, you're going to get a nice big chunk of damage. And then your headhunter is going to proc even more damage. You can usually at this point, with these current items, I'm looking for Spirit Armor, and I will drop these items. This is usually my core for my actives. In Decay, again, Decay instead of Restorative if they have a lot of healing. I'll pick up Healbane around at this point. I will get my improved Spirit Armor and Reach. Reach is very nice because it increases the range of your ultimate for that early game. It just makes it connect a little closer. And then, you know, once you get much more rich and ahead of the game, you can pick up your cooldown, you pick up a crippling headshot, you can start buying your big ticket items. Colossus is very good. You can replace Restorative Locket with Colossus once you get enough money. This item is very good for when you swap yourself into the enemy team. This is a shout out to Rib for giving me this idea. You swap yourself into the enemy team, proccing Colossus. This gives you a nice big increase in resistances here on the left, as you can see, and it also provides a huge movement slow to everything nearby you. Makes it very easy to swap yourself in and get out. It also gives you 20% melee damage and weapon damage, which again, weapon damage is nothing we complain about. It increases your health quite a substantial amount with a flat 600 health on the item, plus the 20% base health from it being a 6200 green. Another option, if you just find people are really slippery and getting away from you, you can pick up Slowing Bullets. I really like this item if you have a lot of really mobile characters on the enemy team, because you can hit them with a nice slowing hex here, and then with the Slowing Bullets, they are really not moving quickly. They are having a very hard time getting away from you. You slowing hex, you get to do your whole combo to them. It's really great. It's really strong. You know, you're really kind of quite strong at this point. Really difficult to actually fight Paradox if she's ahead of you and has items. I'd say your main spikes come from like Headhunter, Improved Spirit Armor, and then Crippling Headshot for damage, and then your defensives are going to be Colossus, Healbane, Vine Barrier, and Boots. But this is all like your main core items. Obviously, there's a lot of customization in terms of the items. It's a lot of the comp you play, but you can be flexible about it and figure it out as you go. Okay, so let's go into a replay of mine. This is a Ascendant 3 ranked game. And let's cover some of your early game basic laning plan. So I'm here with a Vindicta in my lane. I'm just doing a lot of poking, just pressuring while he gets his minions. You know, basic trading philosophy in lane in a MOBA. When they are trying to get their money, you poke them, or you pressure the wave on your own for free. They push the wave pretty heavily against us, but we have a very powerful lane against them. So we're looking for kills and early pressure. Here, level 2, I go for a snare into my pulse bomb. That's a pretty standard combo. A lot of people like to throw pulse bomb for 1 tick and then snare. I think for more consistent trading damage, especially when the 7 pushes up here, you can snare them into the bomb and they'll take 2 ticks and then you can shoot them afterwards. Some people argue whether or not you should bomb first and then carbine because the carbine benefits from the amplification. I like to snare them into the trap, which makes the slow go on longer. They're probably going to take 2 ticks from the bomb. I think that's generally a little bit better for trading. It feels more consistent because they're rooted, and it generally catches your enemy off guard a little more. This is another nice useful thing for Paradox while laning, is you have 3 stamina. You should really not let your stamina overfill. You can save a lot of ammunition by rolling and shooting. Here I decided to bomb melee for confirms on the minions. I should have probably just rolled and shot instead and used my stamina, because when you're sliding, there is no ammo cost. So roll slide is very good. My Vindicator gets a nice tether here. The 7 is just caught in the middle and dies in the open. I'll go back and talk about this. So here's an example of when you're taking an early exchange, you like getting close and using 1 on the floor. This is going to get you that immediate damage amplification, and if they're trying to punch you or trying to chase you, they're going to eat all of that grenade damage, giving you that stacking amp. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to win that trade if they're playing inside your grenade. Okay, so here we're just going to talk about the bread and butter of combos. Carbine, wall, swap. This is your bread and butter every time. Very straightforward. This is your classic, quick, catch your opponent off guard, misposition them. Carbine, wall, swap. Pull them right into your team. They can immediately kill them. Very, very good to misplace an enemy. Does a lot of damage. Helps you with a 1v1. A lot of the time when you're fighting 1v1, you want to get close with this. You want to get into close range, carbine them, wall swap, and then you can keep kiting in between the wall. But that's the general, your like very basic bread and butter that's going to be consistently dueling and fighting people. So here's one more example of the wall swap combo. This one was when I do not have carbine off cooldown and my teammate actually ends up landing some CC for me. So he gets a pin here and then I wall swap him through that, so he has to run around the wall and he's silenced. He ends up dying for this most likely. I think any other character but Eternus is dead there every time. As you can hear, I should swap them through this. Again, this is an example of the wall being really good in a tight space. It's in the doorway. Anyone who wants to fight us in this room has to walk through taking that % health and that silence. Okay, that's about all that I have to tell you guys about the easy entry level Paradox stuff. I really appreciate anybody who took the time to watch and learn from this video. I'm going to be doing more kind of educational content and possibly more hero or champion guides, whatever you want to call them. I can do some movement stuff too. I'm not really sure the order of which I'm going to do them. I think my next content is probably going to be something along the lines of a VOD review of my own game, kind of talking about what I'm doing in the game and why I'm doing certain things. And I can go over more like macro plan and where you should be in a game and stuff like that. But I think this is a character too that you need to be really patient with yourself to learn. She's one of the harder characters in the game and requires a lot of knowledge and mechanical skill to get high value out of. She is a very, very fun character and has some of the best movement in the game. She is some of the quickest at getting around the map with her speed combo. She is some of the most satisfying and oppressive when you get ahead. It's one of the few characters with baked in CC in her kit. So it's just very powerful. Silence being on an ability is very good. You can even chain it with Silence Glyph and you can really shut down characters. I think she is probably the most fun character in the game to play. But you can decide that for yourself after you give her a shot. One last note I forgot to mention earlier in the carbine is when you have your 3 and you use it in the air, it does halt you in the air if you zoom in. And it maintains all your momentum. You come off a zip and freeze, you will keep your momentum after you freeze time. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you guys like and subscribe for future content. I will be posting a lot more Deadlock content in the future, so stick around and hopefully, can reach Eternus kind of soon.